Well, we've made it to the week before Easter. Sunday is called Palm Sunday. It's recognized as the Sunday that Jesus made his triumphant entry into Jerusalem to celebrate the week of the Passover. Jesus knew, and so did his disciples, that they probably would not come out of Jerusalem alive, but they were thinking these things for different reasons. They thought the Pharisees just wanted to kill Jesus because he was taking a stand for things that they didn't really like. They didn't realize that Jesus' whole purpose of going into Jerusalem was to die. This sacrifice that he was about to make to become the Passover lamb for all eternity. This would be a Passover unlike any other. But that's not the story of this Palm Sunday that I want to focus on. Really what I want to focus on is what happened right after the triumphant entry, when Jesus went into the temple of God. Not only, you see, did Jesus come into Jerusalem with a pomp and circumstance type of public entry, but he made a very public appearance in the temple. And I want you to hear from Matthew chapter 21 what happened. In Matthew 21, verses 12 and 13, it says, "And Jesus went into the temple of God and cast out all them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves. He said unto them, It is written, My house shall be called a house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves." A couple of things in that passage. As he went into the temple of God, he cast out some people. He overthrew some people. Can you imagine what would happen in our churches today if God came in and began to throw people out? The reality of this story is that when we talk about the temple of God, it's such a deeper meaning. I'll get into that in just a little bit, but I want you to focus on those things we just talked about. That he cast out, that he overthrew, and the words that he said were, "My house shall be a house of prayer, but you've made it a den of thieves." This is a strange time in our world and in our nation. Never in my life have I been told that we cannot congregate as a church body, that it's not recommended that we have church meetings. I can't ever think of a time that that's happened. I know this happens in other places in the world where the law forbids them to practice Christianity, to practice church meeting, to have these types of meetings. But this is America. We're supposed to be the land of the free, the home of the brave. We're supposed to be able to go to church on Sunday. And so this pandemic has caused us to become shut-ins. But it also gives us a really good opportunity to reflect on some things. How many of you miss attending church services? What exactly do you miss the most? And overall, what would you say was the biggest reason you attended church services anyway? Looking back at our story in Matthew, the temple was a place that was built for God to reside in, for his followers to come and to worship him daily. It was a place of daily sacrifices on the altar. It was a place of holiness. You know, the Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians that our bodies are the temple of God. That temple of God still exists, not in the form of the building on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, but in the very lives of those that just last week we talked about being born again, that the Spirit of God lives in us. He resides in us. We're to come to worship him daily. We're to lay our lives on the altar. Paul tells us in Romans 12 to present our bodies as a living sacrifice daily. That we would be holy as he is holy. So I wonder if Jesus came into the temple of God today, what does he need to cast out of your life? What does he need to cast out of my life? What does he need to overthrow that maybe is taking priority over making his house a house of prayer? You see, the religious leaders had found a great way to take advantage of the people. They were selling animals for sacrifices at extremely high prices and collecting this extra money, they said, for the temple, but really for themselves, to pocket that they could take home, that they could become rich over a time that was supposed to be sacred and holy. What do we do in our lives that takes away from our holy walk with God, that we may fill ourselves with more worldliness? What can we glean out of this? I think two things. First, the church is not a social club. Far too often we come together on Sunday mornings as a church body, and before services start, before Sunday school starts, before worship really begins, we focus on, did you catch the game last night? How many fish did you catch yesterday? Or what about this? Or what about that? And everything but God seems to be the topic of conversation in our church services. We're not gathering together for social fellowship. That's not what the church was created for. The church was created to reach the lost for Jesus. We need to get back to that. 2, to glean from this story, the church is to be a house of prayer. We've neglected that communication with God far too long. We need to get beyond just praying for physical ailments on a prayer list. We need to get beyond just praying over the pandemic that's going on in a physical sense and start praying for spirituality, for a spiritual renewal, for a revival to come back to this great land, to this world. God said that if his people called by his name would humble themselves and pray and seek his face and turn from their wicked ways, that he would hear from heaven, that he would forgive sin, and that he would heal our land. Maybe we need to pray what David wrote in Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me to everlasting. Maybe we need to start praying, God, search me. Know my heart. Try me. Know my thoughts. See if there be any wicked way in me, that I can repent, that I may walk in holiness into your everlasting. Can I encourage you over the next few weeks, while we're still away from our church buildings, while we're away from corporate worship services, to spend this time focusing on your personal prayer life, your personal time with God. Become a person of holiness, that you may truly walk in his light, so that when we congregate again, we'll find a new purpose in our worship. God bless you.